There are a lot of guys that seem to think that sex is just part of the relationship, right? It's built in, it's automatic. It doesn't matter how they treat you. It's just meant for you to give it to them, right? Sexual entitlement is literally the belief that your body is just included. It's part of some relationship contract, right? Your availability lives on standby. This doesn't matter if he's mean to you, rude to you, cruel, if you have a headache, if you're in the mood. None of this matters because he, quote, has needs. And if you're not meeting them, you're failing. This is a very difficult thing that a lot of women are facing. There's a mindset of these men that it is owed and that they're entitled to it. And it's really not that surprising to me. Now, obviously, I understand that sex is generally part of an agreement when you're in a relationship, generally speaking, but basic human decency and kindness are also part of that agreement. And I don't know when these two things broke apart. This really isn't about different libidos and different sex drives and somebody feeling disappointed sometimes and a little bit of rejection or two people wanting different things. That's not what this is. This is a conversation about why a woman would not desire someone who is coercing her and who is acting completely entitled. You have somebody that is angry or begging or yelling or tracking the frequency on a calendar like a crazy person. This is about an abusive man truly just acting like it's guaranteed, like he just is owed this. So in today's episode of Real Talk with Lisa Sonni, Relationships Uncensored, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm actually reading 3 stories from survivors, 3 stories from women who are in relationships that are coercive. And this is a really interesting one because these 3 women anonymously have agreed to share their stories. And I want you to listen and really see if you see yourself. Men in relationships like this, you're going to hear them say things like, I deserve this, or I'm owed this. You're my wife. You're my girlfriend. This is part of relationships. This is part of marriage. But actually, that belief is so important. We can't just go past that. Listen to how a guy like this argues. Listen to how he handles the word no. And ultimately, let's take a step back here. What is driving this type of behavior is entitlement. There is a belief, right? This is not insecurity. This isn't his needs. This isn't, confusion of how relationships work. Oh, I just thought we could have it every day or whatever the frequency that these guys really demand. This is crystal clear entitlement. And I'm telling you, when a man like this believes that he is owed something from you, he's going to collect. He's absolutely going to collect. This whole belief system is truly the biggest engine behind all abuse. Boys are often taught that their desire proves something about them. Their masculinity gets measured in their access to women. You see this constantly. You see this in red pill podcasts, in everywhere around us in the patriarchy. Rejection is not something that a lot of men seem to be comfortable with. And in fact, even calling it rejection feels a little ridiculous, right? Because how is it rejection if you're not in the mood or you don't feel like it tonight? Why does it need to be received as this rejection? Well, it threatens their identity, and that's really what escalates it, right? We need to actually be teaching boys and men how to handle no. It shouldn't be that difficult. I actually find it wild that it is, right? Why does it need to be, sexual frustration if somebody's not willing tonight? It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, a lot of men grow up believing that they're owed sexual access, and they certainly feel, like a man when they seem to get it, right? Now, on the flip side, women are raised to avoid male disapproval, right? We don't want men to be rejected. We don't want them to be disappointed. God forbid we hurt a man's feelings, right? We soften, we manage the mood. We use our bodies to manage the mood. And I think that's one of the worst things, right? So when pressure shows up, women default to this sort of self-correction and what can I do or what did I do? There's a lot of internalization of self-blame where men are immediately looking to who was supposed to give me something and they didn't. And that's their fault. There's something wrong with my wife, my girlfriend. There's something wrong with my partner because she doesn't always want to have sex with me. I always want to have sex with her. Why doesn't she feel the same? But we're talking today about men who are coercive. And the truth is, nothing absolutely destroys desire in a woman faster than coercion, faster than entitlement. Now, the truth is, a lot of men will say, right, I have needs or men have needs. And the truth is, the fact that men view sex as a need is wild because it's in fact not a need. That's not even something that is really debatable. I know that a lot of men do try to debate that and quote all these ridiculous things, but the absolute fact is that it is not a need, meaning you do not need someone else's body. Everyone is able to go take care of themselves if you feel like it's an absolute need for you. It is not a need to enter someone else's body. But where you really see this hierarchy show up in these relationships, right? When he needs something, that's important and he deserves it. This is the language that they use. I deserve it. I'm owed it. It's part of marriage. It's your duty. This is an obligation, and they actually, in fact, often compare it to chores. But what you see is that he's at the top. Your needs don't matter. If you need emotional safety, you're being dramatic. If you need to be in the mood, that's ridiculous. This is a very clear cut. He is entitled because he sees himself as superior to you. Now, abusiveness runs on hierarchy, right? It's always on this idea that one person's needs sit higher than the other person's need. That's absolutely a perfect opportunity for men to coerce their wives when they feel that way, because to them, it's not coercion. They're just convincing you. They're just persuading you. They're just reminding you of what your duty is in the relationship. But the truth is, we act like, most men aren't doing this. I would argue that's absolutely not true. The amount of women that report that this is happening to them, it's unbelievable. And in fact, I often see men in comment sections on videos that I make about this topic. They'll say things like, my wife never says no. She knows better. Meanwhile, I have clients who tell me they never say no because they feel like they can't. So men wear this, my wife never says no, as a badge of honor. But what's actually happening is they're actually announcing to the world that she doesn't feel safe to say no. Any woman, any man, any person should be able to say no. Here's some things we honestly can't just move past, okay? 1 in 3 women globally report physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. Most of it happens inside relationships, and I think that's important. This is not happening on the street. This isn't a few bad apples. This is happening from partners, from husbands, from boyfriends. This is not strangers. Do you hear me? In the US, about 1 in 5 women report rape or attempted rape. That's an incredible number. A huge percentage of that is from someone that they were with. Again, in relationships, these are men that women know. Marital rape was legal in parts of the United States until 1993. Do you hear that? 1993. That is not ancient history. That is relatively recent. And that means that there were entire generations of men raised in a system where access to their wife's body was assumed, but was built into the law. So we can't just move past that and pretend that that was so long ago that it's not still showing up in attitudes. We have so much research that shows that so many women consent to sex that they don't even want in order to not face anger and withdrawal and stonewalling, rage, escalation, eye rolls, demands, all of these things, right? This is sexual compliance. This has a name. It's common and it's well studied. It is a well-studied topic. There are actual physiological scales that measure sexual entitlement beliefs. Men on average score way higher on endorsement of statements like sex is expected in a committed relationship. This is an attitude that is documented from men. That is the belief structure that I'm talking about, and that's so important. Now, entitlement is truly one of the strongest predictors of abusive behavior, right? It's not stress. We're not talking about confusion or a bad day or trauma or addiction or all these things that we sort of assign instead of just calling it what it is, which is entitlement. So when you hear these stories from these 3 women, don't just change them into, oh, well, maybe he... No, listen to these women. Really hear it. This is a huge pattern. All right, so let's get into the first story. Dear Lisa, I've been following you for a long time, and I don't comment much, but when you talk about sexual coercion, it really hits me in the heart. I've been married for 16 years, and I didn't even have a word for what was happening until I found your page. My husband wants sex every single day. If it's not every day, there's a problem. Honestly, we probably have sex 4 to 5 times a week, sometimes more. But if there's too long of a gap, even just a couple of days, he starts acting mean. He's quiet and irritated. He'll say things like, "What's going on with you?" rudely, or "Normal couples don't live like roommates," or "We're having sex later," as a statement. The part that makes me feel crazy is that he can scream at me in the morning, wake me up in the middle of the night when he's split and say the most cruel things that anyone has ever said to me, call me selfish, say I have an attitude, and then, like nothing happened, start initiating sex. If I pull away, he says, I deserve intimacy from my wife. He uses that word, deserve. Sometimes I'll do other things, like oral, even if I'm not in the mood for more, and it's still not enough. I only do it because he says I have to take care of him. If it doesn't end in actual sex, he'll say that I'm teasing him or withholding and tell me straight up that it's not enough. He genuinely does not connect how he treats me during the day with whether I want him or not at night. It's like those two things are completely separate categories in his head. I just don't work like that. I actually wish I did. He said he would be nicer to me if he wasn't sexually frustrated. The weird thing is, even when we do have sex 7 days a week, he's still mean to me. When he's angry, he says we're not having enough sex, and that's the problem. When he's calm, he says sex is how he feels close and that I should want that too. But I don't feel close after being yelled at and called names and told that I'm not enough. He regularly threatens to cheat on me and leave me all the time. I feel tense, I feel small, and then worse, I feel guilty for not wanting him. I don't even know what's normal anymore. I just know that I feel like my body is something he expects access to, no matter what kind of day that I've had with him. I don't know what to do. Now, what he's really saying here is actually extremely important, right? I want sex, and that matters so much more than how you feel. In fact, your feelings are a burden. They're totally inconvenient, right? He's telling you that the way that he acts has no bearing on what he's owed. So his behavior is irrelevant. This is such clear entitlement. It's not even funny, right? This is right there. Like what I did earlier shouldn't affect that. Okay, so I yelled at you. Who cares? It's absolutely a ridiculous thought because the truth is, if you were to flip the genders and there's a woman screaming at her husband, treating him horribly, why would he want intimacy? It's not different at all when you flip it. Nobody should be treating someone badly and then just expecting access to their body, right? He really believes that his anger has nothing to do with her desire. It's crazy. Your body can't just cooperate when you're actually experiencing hurt. When your nervous system is totally out of whack, if you're living in a fight or flight response, how do you even access desire? If you listen to sex therapists talk about this, and I've had several on my show, Dr. Kate Balistreri, I've had Dr. Danielle Kramer, we've had these conversations. This is absolutely not a normal expectation. This is a coercive, entitled expectation. He really thinks that he should be able to yell at you during the day and then be getting sex from you at night. And that's actually an interesting thing that I even said there, right? Getting sex from you. That's exactly what it is. You have something and he wants to get it from you. This isn't something that he's participating in with you. He's getting something from you. He's using your body for his own pleasure. More often than not, your pleasure is not part of this. A guy like this can vent, he can explode, he can say what he says. He feels better after he unleashes this wrath on you, right? But then he's done, he's over that mood, and now he wants sex. And he can actually not bring that feeling into the bedroom. He doesn't want you to bring it either. He can separate those two things. It's kind of interesting how men can do that, how they can kind of compartmentalize this. But he assumes that you should also not bring it in. Meanwhile, he wasn't actually the one impacted. He was not the one who was on the receiving end of it. He delivered it so he can get over it because he wasn't hurt by it. You were hurt by it. But then he'd have to see you as a person, right? He'd actually have to care about your feelings to be impacted by it. A normal person would feel terrible that they treated their partner so badly, they wouldn't even attempt to have sex. But a man like this will, because he doesn't care about you and he's entitled. Right? He thinks that sex is going to fix it. And in fact, a lot of these men use sex in lieu of an apology, if you understand, right? We had sex, so obviously what I said or did wasn't that bad. She's over it now. Meanwhile, he coerced it from you. And then he uses that to give himself a pat on the back and say that he's not a bad guy. And he's going to tell you things like, sex brings closeness, just want to feel close to you. He doesn't want to feel close to you. Abusive men are not interested in feeling close to you. And a coercive man is an abusive man. There's not a difference. When you pull away, he's going to call it rejection. If you hesitate, he's going to call it a problem. There's always going to be some battle. You say no, God forbid, even if it's you have a headache, but also if you say, you were mean to me earlier, he's going to tell you that you are withholding. And one of the worst parts is he can flip that on you, but we'll get more into that a little bit later. That feeling of him touching you, and I hear women say you just like your whole body just freezes. You don't even want his hands on you. So often you kind of disassociate, right? You go somewhere else in your head just to kind of get through it because he heard no and he's angry and it's an inconvenience. It's frustrating, right? You're not thinking about connection in that moment. You're thinking about how this feels to you, how horrible this feels, how it feels like a violation. And trust me, so many people are going to say, well, if you feel like this, you should leave, as if abusive men just let you leave. Not to mention the fact that most women who are experiencing this don't recognize this as abuse because men have convinced us, the patriarchy has convinced us that this is something that is owed. So it makes sense to give it, but it really doesn't. We need to see this differently. And this is why I talk about this. I actually, for those that know me, I hate talking about this topic. I really do, because it brings the worst of the worst men to my comment sections, the most entitled men. But I make this content for women so that women can feel seen, heard, and understood. Now, what he's actually doing here is kind of interesting, right? He acts like his access doesn't depend on how he behaves. And that really allows him to not really ever take accountability. One of the most kind of prevalent beliefs here is that what he did shouldn't actually cost him anything. That really speaks to the superiority and back to the hierarchy that I was talking about. This is entitlement. I'm going to say that word a million times. I want people to truly see this as so related and caused by men's entitlement. It is a huge problem. This really tells you where the center of gravity is for a guy like this. How does someone scream at you and then just want sex later? There's several reasons for this, okay? Compartmentalization is kind of an interesting one. Like he puts the fight in a box and then he puts sex in another box. And those two boxes have nothing to do with each other. They're just unrelated, right? So when he's done being angry, he can close that box and then he can open the sex box and that's there. And again, not related at all, right? It's like clean slate. He demands a clean slate. He's entitled to a clean slate because now he wants something. And he shouldn't have to do anything to get it because he already did. He married you. He already did. He's in a relationship with you. And that's all he has to do is just physically be present. How he treats you has no bearing on this. The next reason is he can just shut his empathy off, if he even had it to begin with, right? How you feel, push that right aside, irrelevant, because it slows him down. Your feelings and having to deal with your feelings, that would actually stop him from getting what he wants. So he just says he didn't do anything wrong. He says you're being ridiculous. He says you owe it to him because he doesn't want to sit in what he did. He doesn't want to sit in what he said. He doesn't want to have to face it. So he tells himself, and he probably tells you, that you're overreacting, dramatic, ridiculous, emotional, withholding, unfair, abusive, whatever he says to you, right? Because his need is the only thing that matters. So he's not really going to look at what he's done to you. He also has this ability to really objectify you, right? He doesn't actually have to have you fully present, fully there. He's not concerned if you are emotionally present in this because your body is present and you are a vessel. Going back to what I said, he is doing this to you. He is not sharing this with you. And when you really look at it like that, it's actually really disgusting because access was his goal. So he gets that. So the only thing that matters is your physical availability, not your feelings. That doesn't matter at all. Now, there's also ego, which I think is really fascinating. He can use sex to prove that he still has you. That's all that it takes, right? I'm not rejected because she's having sex with me. Sex calms him down, but he doesn't actually have to do anything. So he might feel dysregulated, and then he uses your body to regulate, but he hasn't actually repaired anything. He didn't lose any power. He didn't give anything up. So he's back to normal after sex, and you're not. In fact, you're worse because now not only were you coerced and pressured, you had non-consensual sex. And the truth is, there's a 4-letter word for that. There's a 4-letter word for non-consensual sex. And I'm sorry to tell you guys, but it's not love. The next piece is his beliefs, right? He believes that being your husband means he gets access. He's your boyfriend, he's your husband, he's your partner, he's owed it. That's it, period. Anger shouldn't cancel his right to have your body. Closeness is available when he wants it and how he wants it. And closeness is sex because women often want closeness. They want to feel close. And they need emotional safety to do that. But I can tell you, any man listening to this that's abusive would roll his eyes instantly at the idea of emotional safety. And there's a part here that's kind of something that we can't really skip over. And I know not all men watch porn, but there is a porn layer here that kind of has to be talked about, right? If most of your arousal in your lifetime has happened in situations where the other person's feelings just don't even factor in, then it's really easy to separate sex from empathy. So if you've been watching a lot of that, you don't see the other person as a whole person that's present. You see them as a vessel. Porn is really a man doing it to a woman. That's the premise of so many of these. So it makes sense that men still view sex that way, even in relationships. So especially if you look at something like aggression and sex have been paired in all of these videos that he watches, then how are those two things separate, right? They don't feel incompatible to him. It feels normal. It feels logical even. And he'll expect you to reset because he reset. He expects your body to respond because he wants it. It's like, why aren't you in the mood? What's wrong with you? You yelled at me. You're mean to me. You're cruel. Listen to what that woman was describing. Just straight up cruelty. Why would she want to sleep with him? But that's what he thinks. She should sleep with me. What's wrong with her that she doesn't want to sleep with me? So then you feel guilty for having really normal reactions. If your body is shutting down and you are literally just disgusted with this person touching you, that makes sense. And again, it's not just, well, just leave him. Abusive men do not let their wives leave very easily. They gaslight you and they convince you that you're the problem. And when you look at the society and the belief systems of women, that this is owed to men, it's easy to say leave and it's very difficult to actually do. Not to mention it involves like blowing up your whole life half the time to actually exit a relationship like this. They don't just let you leave. I actually would push that question back at abusive men. If you don't feel that you're getting your needs met, why not leave your wife? If you want a woman who you can scream at, be mean to, and sleep with, please go find that woman. I'm not quite sure who she is, but I certainly think you should go look for that. Instead of saying the victim should leave the abuser, knowing how hard that is, why shouldn't the abuser leave the victim? That makes way more sense to me. Now, this is really where sex stops being connection and starts being compliance, and this matters. But let's go into the second story. Lisa, I don't even know if this counts as coercion or if I'm just in a miserable marriage, but I've been watching your videos and something clicked when you talk about men who keep sexual score. My husband tracks how often we have sex, not in a joking way, literally. He'll say, it's been 8 days, or we only did it twice this month. He brings up exact numbers like he's reading off of a report. And I found out that he literally uses his calendar to track when we do it and when I don't say yes. If I'm tired or not in the mood, he'll roll over and sigh dramatically, or he'll say, so I guess we're back to this again. And the next day, he's cold and short with me. He'll slam cabinets, acting like I've personally wronged him. What makes it worse is he doesn't factor in anything else. If we argued that week, doesn't matter. If he snapped at me in front of friends, doesn't matter. If I've had a stressful few days, doesn't matter. It's been 11 days. Like that number alone proves that I'm a bad wife. He's even said to me, I have needs. This is part of marriage. Like there's a contract I signed that says my body operates on his schedule. He told me that I did sign a contract. It's our marriage contract. He said he would never reject me. Meanwhile, he rejects me emotionally all the time. I feel so anxious when I realize that it's been a few days because I know the countdown is happening in his head. I start calculating it before he does. I'll think, okay, it's been 6 days. He's going to bring it up. And then he does. Sometimes I initiate because I'm scared if I let it go on too long, he'll be even meaner than usual. And honestly, the counting is what kills any desire I might have had. There is nothing attractive about being treated like this. I don't feel wanted. Am I crazy? And a man like this, right, he's telling you that there's a minimum that he expects. He has a number in his head, which in this case sounds like 7 days a week. And when she fails to meet that number, she's a bad wife. So no matter what's happening, he expects consistent sex. Once again, it doesn't matter how he treats her. Like, look at the pattern, right? His needs are what set the rhythm of everything. Frequency is something that he uses to prove that he's cared for, right? Like, my wife and I have sex every day, and he wears that like a badge of honor. He feels it says something about him, which again is not about the relationship. It's not about her. It's not about mutual satisfaction. It is so specifically about him. He's counting days. And it's funny because you hear about this in like jokes on Instagram reels and TikToks where you see men doing this. This is a guy who's doing this in real life. It's insane that he's holding a number in his head. He's counting it and he uses it as proof. It's absolutely gross, right? He doesn't ask you, how was your week, or how you feel, or care how he treats you, or if you feel close. He just cares that he gets it. So she feels this invisible clock ticking, and it's interesting. One of the things that she really pointed out that I think a lot of women will relate to, I know I can relate in my previous relationship, this idea that you need to perform sex with him so that he's not mean to you. So you're using it to manage his mood, but you're doing that for your own safety. It's a survival thing, which you'd only be doing if you felt the need to survive in a relationship like this. If it was actually something that where you were able to say no and you were able to actually participate in this, you wouldn't be feeling this way, right? If you felt safe, this isn't what safety would feel like. This is absolutely abuse. Period. Full stop. This is abuse. And I think a lot of women can even relate to feeling this in their body. You're braced, you're waiting, you're looking at your own calendar being like, oh my God, it's been 5 days. Something bad's going to happen. So I need to, and you initiate to avoid it. Because, a lot of men would even say like, you never initiate, and they get mad at their wives for not initiating. Meanwhile, they're not initiating because they don't feel it. But let's not breeze right past the women who are in fact initiating, and men are using that to be like, see, she wants me. No, she's protecting herself. She's protecting herself. And men would be, good men would be horrified to hear this, right? But abusive men are like, whatever, just do it. You hear the way some of these men even beg, right? Like, it only takes 5 minutes. What's the problem? Like, you have time for the dishes. You don't have time for this. I mowed the lawn today. I did stuff for you. What the hell? And they want it from you. It's such a transaction. It's absolutely gross. But here you are counting days, using math to figure out your sex life. It's crazy. And he doesn't even have to yell because the mood, let's talk about the mood that she was describing, right? He's slamming cabinets. So he's maybe not always yelling at her, but that coldness, that cruelty, the withdrawing, the stonewalling, the slamming things, the huffing, the eye rolls, all of that matters so much. He's teaching you that if there are too many days that go between, that there's a debt to be paid. You pay it with your body, and if you don't, you're being punished by his mood and his behavior. It really hurts. It's brutal, right? So he'll say, I have needs, which again, sex is not a need. From a biological and medical standpoint, let's just drill this home. A need is something that is actually required for survival. Oxygen, that's a need, right? Water, food, makes sense. Sleep, those are needs. Now, libido exists, but it's not a need. Sexual desire exists. Sexual frustration exists. We're not going to pretend those things aren't real. They're real, and they can be uncomfortable. They can be intense. And I get that it can impact a man's mood, but women are entitled to desire, and a mean man is unattractive. It's just that simple. Men need to realize that if your wife is rejecting you, what's wrong with her is that she has a terrible husband. That's her problem. You're the problem. It's absolutely you. And the denial of that only continues this bad marriage that you're essentially forcing your wife or relationship with your girlfriend to be in. It's brutal. I can't fathom a world where these men don't see that they're the problem unless they're absolutely narcissistic. But I guess I just walked face first into the point, didn't I? When he says something like, it's part of relationships, it's part of marriage, like it's a contract, it's a policy, it's a rule, that's gross. There's nothing sexy about that, right? You're turning intimacy into like a performance metric. It's nasty. This is not an obligation. It absolutely isn't. For people that say it's an obligation, because that is so common from men, it is an obligation. It's a duty. It's expected. Ew is all I can say to that. That is the most unattractive thing I've ever heard. Like, you really are so brain dead that you think that a woman would feel desire to know that it's her obligation? Really, like, are you seeing the level that you're putting that on? Even when men compare it to chores, it's wild to me. So it's a chore. So you're admitting that women don't want to do this with you, that they're not enjoying themselves, and you're going to go ahead and do it anyway, even though you know that she's not a willing participant. Do you know what that makes you? There's a word for that, right? But they don't want to see themselves that way. And if men agree with me, then they have to see that they've probably done this. And then they have to see themselves in a mirror. Men hate the mirror that me and women like me are holding up. It makes them so completely angry. So they track frequency, and that's what drives them. right? The number, that's what matters. And the pattern has to stay. I need it. It has to happen, right? Sex is something that he has to have to stay consistent or for you to keep him regulated, right? But nobody can actually consent in an environment like this. If you are not free to say no, then consent is really never going to truly be on the table because you're afraid of a punishment. You know that something bad is going to happen. And that is awful. That is absolutely terrible, right? The countdown is in your mind and you know the days. If you're tracking the schedule and he's tracking the schedule, even if he's not, if you're tracking the schedule, to me, that's the biggest problem. It starts to feel really scheduled then. And you even hear couples therapists sometimes be like, schedule it in. You're not addressing the problems. That's not what a couples therapist should say. And I'm quite certain that a healthy sex therapist would never give that terrible advice. So you start to feel like you're being assessed and you're being monitored and you owe it. And just, this is when women just like, oh, fine, I'll just do it because what else choice do you have, right? You feel like you need to. You're trying to survive in your own relationship. And I know that these two stories sound different, but you see the common thread, right? These men are running the exact same play. Both of these abusive types assume that sex is just there, it's available, it's the baseline. No matter what happened, they center their needs, they center having access to your body. Different personalities, different men, same entitlement. That matters so much. Now, let's shift into the third story. Hey, Lisa, I almost didn't send this because part of me honestly thinks that maybe he's right and I'm the problem. I hope you can help me. I've been watching your videos about sexual entitlement, and it's so uncomfortable because I see us in it, but he says that I'm twisting things. Now, when I don't want to have sex, he doesn't just get upset. He tells me that I'm rejecting him. He says that I'm withholding intimacy on purpose. He's used the words emotionally abusive. He told me that I'm controlling the relationship by deciding when we're intimate. He says, if you loved me, you would want me. And if I try to explain that I don't feel connected after we argue, he says that I'm weaponizing sex to punish him. He said that no man would stay in a marriage like this, and I'm lucky he stays with me. That most wives don't act like this. One time he told me that I was the reason that he feels unwanted in his own home, that I make him feel like a creep for wanting his own wife. After that, I felt so guilty that I just gave in because I don't want to be the reason that he felt that way. And I'm noticing that I do that all the time. The worst part is I've started questioning myself. Am I cold? Am I abusive? Am I broken? Am I actually manipulating him without realizing it? He always talks about healthy relationships and meeting each other's needs like I'm failing his standard. I don't feel empowered when I say no. I'm always defending my character. I don't even know what my own desire feels like anymore. I just know that every time I try to protect my boundaries, it turns into a conversation about what's wrong with me. That's really brutal, Honestly, saying no creates this really interesting problem for her. Women who are in relationships with abusive men, if you say no, that's a problem already. But this guy's doing something kind of even more dangerous than the first two, right? He's actually flipping this on her. I find it really disgusting the way that he's flipped this into making her the abuser. She is abusing him by not giving her body. It's baffling to me that a man could see it this way, but I see this every day. This exactly stems from sexual entitlement, right? She's questioning herself, and her no creates a problem for him. And in order to justify it, he has to flip it. She's controlling the relationship. Listen to the language. She gets to decide when they have sex. Therefore, she's controlling. If one person of any gender does not want to participate, you don't compromise by having sex because one person is not a willing participant. And if one person doesn't consent, there's a 4-letter word for that. We can't move past that, guys. There's already a name. There's no such thing as non-consensual sex. That's not what this is. She doesn't want to do it, and she's doing it for survival. She does not want to participate. And a guy like this is like, I don't care. I don't really care that you don't want to. That's not what matters. What matters is that I want it. So if you don't want it, you need to justify that to me. You need to explain it to me, right? This is evidence against you. Every time you say no, you're harming me. You're abusive. You're the problem. And so many women internalize something like this and they feel like they are in fact the problem. And it makes sense because men often think, abusive men often think that this is a woman's responsibility to regulate them. So they genuinely do think that you're failing them by not doing your job. So he drags into the conversation things like what healthy people do, or like Tom's wife does it. Tom's wife is interested in sleeping with him. What's wrong with you? And they use these big words like emotionally withholding and abusive, and you're controlling, you're weaponizing sex, you're rejecting me. But all of this, it's meant to destabilize you, and it works, right? But that's what it's meant to do. That's exactly the point. You're here trying to prove that you're not cruel, that you're not withholding, so you have sex with him. It's a little reverse psychology, right? If I tell you that you're harming me and I act all hurt and I play the victim, then you're going to want to not be that. You don't want to be seen as a controlling person or a bad wife or abusive. You feel like you're being abused. Meanwhile, he's accusing you, and it almost sounds logical when they do it. When you're being gaslit and you're losing your sense of reality, and someone that you love or have loved is telling you that you're hurting them, of course you're going to try to reflect and listen and hear them out. You know, he starts to feel rejected, and you're like, I don't want my partner to feel that way, and I don't want them to feel like I'm rejecting them. I want them to feel wanted, because you want to feel wanted. You want reciprocity. They want sex. That's what he wants. That's what this is about. And you start to wonder if you're broken, right? And then we turn consent into a debate. Why? How? And you have to justify the reasons that you don't want it. And the crazy part is you're mean to me, or you coerce me, or you seem entitled. That's not enough. This is about proving your loyalty to him, and you have to use your body to do it. It's crazy. He feels insecure, perhaps, right? Like sex is the thing that makes him feel loved and secure. Dude, you need therapy. Therapy will help you with that. You don't need someone else's body to not feel rejected. And if that's true, right? And a lot of men are like, no, but it is, I do. You need therapy. You need to go talk to somebody about this. This is a problem that you're having, and you're using someone else's body. You're an abuser. That's gross. If you accuse your spouse of abusing you for, quote, withholding shouldn't even be part of this. We don't use the word withholding for sex. Now, someone can manipulate with sex, but they're still not withholding sex. Sex is an owed, therefore it cannot be withheld. He is entitled to your body, therefore you don't get to say no. Like, you get that, right? No is not an option. So over time, you're going to start to hesitate before you say no. You're really going to think about it, right? You're sort of calculating, what happens if I say no? How long has it been? Can I say no? It's only been 2 days. I can say no tonight, but tomorrow that's going to be a problem, right? So you start to weigh the outcomes. That's a huge problem. That's something that we all need to really just sit with and face. If this is sounding like you, if you're seeing yourself in these women's stories, this is abuse, right? Wifely duty gets preached. It gets preached constantly. You know, entire generations of women were being told to be a good wife, right? Keep your husband satisfied. Older generations of women said it, but they said it because they know what bad things happen when you don't. So they're attempting to keep us safe, where women now are like, I don't need to do that. I refuse, right? Hello, women are choosing to be single. Hello, male loneliness epidemic. That's why this is happening, because men are not catching up to what's actually happening relationally. Marital rape was legal into the 90s, right? That belief did not just go away overnight. In a lot of churches, sex is still to this day framed as an obligation inside marriage, right? Do not deprive one another. That verse gets quoted a lot, but rarely actually unpacked. Purity culture even, it trains women to guard sex before marriage and then flip a switch and just provide it on command after, right? Anytime he wants it. Be pure and then give it up any old time. So you go from your body is sacred to your body is owed in one ceremony. It is a wild concept. Girls are taught that men struggle with lust. I was taught that. Men want this from you. Men will say anything. Men are going to tell you that their D is going to fall off, or that their you-know-whats are going to turn blue, right? And then women become the gatekeepers of sex. But then that puts us in this role of becoming regulators of male temptation. And frankly, they're friggin' entitlement. So if he's cheating on her, why did he cheat? What did she do, or what didn't she do? It's her fault that he cheated. But what's crazy is that there are women who say, like, I was having sex with him 5-6 times a week and he still cheated. And it's like, hello, that's the point, because it doesn't matter. Cheaters don't cheat because of lack of frequency. It's not a woman's fault, or it's man's fault if he gets cheated on. It is not the person who's been cheated on's fault for being cheated on. It is always the cheater's fault. But you don't see that narrative as often. When it's a woman being cheated on, it always flips to what happened And what did she do or not do, right? This message of like, keep him happy, men have needs, that's just how men are. And you hear these jokes, right? Like wives with headaches. Oh, here she goes again with a headache to get out of it. So you all agree that you don't take no for an answer and that women have no choice but to come up with excuses. You say that out loud and you think it's funny. It's crazy. How can you think that's funny? You're admitting to non-consensual sex. You're admitting that she can't say no, that you just don't say, okay, cool, no for tonight. We'll try again tomorrow. No big deal. You even see like sitcom dads begging for sex, and then the laugh track gets played over it. It's absolutely gross. Religious counseling prioritizes marital unity over the autonomy of the woman in the relationship. When abusiveness happens, it's always like, but are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Right? So desire gets framed as something that women owe, and it's specifically to maintain this sort of harmony in a marriage, right? I have so many clients who've told me that their grandmothers were like, sometimes you just do it. Ugh. And women now, thankfully, are like, no thanks. But we never used to call it coercion, and we never really traced it to entitlement. It was just kind of how things are. And I'm really happy that this is changing, right? If your mother endured it and called it normal, fine, but you're not doing that, right? If your pastor calls it duty, okay, cool, he can go ahead and do that, but that's not what it actually is. That's framing, and you need to see who are these people that are saying this to you and really look at if you want people like this in your life, meet his needs so he doesn't stray. That's what's going on here. What you see in these 3 stories is really interesting. I hope that you see yourself in these stories and sort of wake up and start to see what's happening on his end. Start looking at how he feels in order to behave this way, or rather how he doesn't feel about you in order to behave this way, because a man that loves you would never behave this way. Entitlement isn't always a really loud thing, right? I think that we see it as stomping around and like yelling, I deserve this in all areas. They're pretty loud when it comes to this particular topic, but they do say these things out loud. Pay attention to the words, right? I deserve this. I'm owed this. If your body is shutting down, it makes sense. It really does. Your body is recognizing exactly what it needs to. It's shutting down. It's responding the way that it is meant to respond when pressure is present, when there is no safety, right? When access is assumed, that's a natural response. It absolutely is. Your nervous system is genuinely protecting you, and that matters. So if you feel tense instead of turned on when he initiates sex, that makes sense. If you feel numb, that makes sense. If you feel resentful or confused or guilty or detached or disgusted, that makes sense when you are in a relationship where sexual entitlement and sexual coercion is present. That's not a character flaw, and you're not failing. Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Talk with Lisa Sonni, Relationships Uncensored, and I'll catch you in the next one.